Cheating is pretty great, really. We all have some fond memories of cheating in games, and some of us did it on the N64 too, with a little help from the Game Shark. And we're talking about real cheating, not just trying to use warps in the race with Koopa the Quick in Super Mario 64 and being told off, or trying to warp around Hyrule in Ocarina of Time to beat the Bigoron Sword quest and getting your time cut down to seconds. No, we're talking about the hard codes. Game Shark, built-in cheat codes, hacking, the real deal. The kind of cheats that make you feel like a genius, until ultimately you realize the only thing you were cheating was yourself. Or in the case of some of these N64 classics, the game will straight up tell you itself. Well, perhaps not quite so bluntly as that, but we will be looking at some fun trivia surrounding cheats on the N64, which either directly discourage the player from cheating or restricts them for doing the dirty. The N64 was awesome, and its games were awesome too. Titles like, essentially the entire Rare catalogue, let's be honest. But there were more games on the console than those, of course, like Star Wars Rogue Squadron, Battle Tanks, and the Turok franchise. But Rare really did blow everything out of the water with their slick sense of humour and hardcore game development chops. We'll start off with one punishment for cheating that was particularly harsh, with some consequences being quite permanent. Donkey Kong 64 was an incredible game when it was released, bringing the collectathon subgenre to its logical conclusion. But just because a game is good doesn't mean people won't want to cheat in it. This seems particularly true with platformer games, where young hands may not be able to dexterously perform acrobatics like an ape in the trees. One way you might make progress in such a situation is to remove one of the challenges that prevents progress, like the entire health system. By giving yourself infinite health, you'd think that it'd be smooth sailing to get to the end of DK's adventure, but let us assure you, this is not the case. If playing the game with the assistance of a Game Shark device to enable infinite health, everything will be fine until the player attempts to reload the game without the cheat enabled. If this is done, then the player will find themselves in for a world of chaos. The entire game may become corrupted, so while it might continue to boot and play, it will not be a fun experience. Characters may fly around the screen, vigorously vibrating on the spot, arms gesticulating in all manner of disturbing ways. This is the lightest of the problems, however, as the game autosaves regularly, which is a bigger problem than it may initially seem. Many players have reported that these glitchy effects only exist in the save file currently being used, but become permanent as soon as the game is saved. And with the game autosaving practically every minute, this is a surefire way to ruin a save file. That said, some players have reported that these issues corrupted their entire cartridge and persist even after deleting the save. If this is true, it means that the entire cartridge is practically unsalvageable, especially when other glitches that result from using the cheat are dying in a single hit or being completely unable to pick up items, rendering the game an unplayable mess. We actually think that this was not an intended result of punishing cheaters from Rare, but rather a result of the cheat device screwing with the game's code just a bit too much, and then the autosave feature making the results permanent. But we suppose only the game's programmers will know for certain. Something that Rare very much did intend for, however, was the mature nature of one of their other titles, Conker's Bad Fur Day. If a developer wants you to know that they don't approve of your cheating habits, they don't need to brick your game to do so. They can just tell you directly. For example, there is a full cheat code entry screen within Conker's Bad Fur Day, but that isn't to say the team wants you to use it to its fullest. They will in fact tell you they don't want you to. Sometimes when the player enters this menu, the imp that makes quips as you type will make fun of you, saying, "You cheated bastard!" Using cheats is one thing, but making a mistake is another. If an incorrect code is entered, the player will be told that somebody must have given them the wrong cheat code. Somebody told you the wrong cheat! But if the wrong code is entered for a second time, then the demon will take a more aggressive approach and say, "Didn't work first time, ain't gonna work second time, dipshit!" We're pretty sure calling players a dipshit qualifies as a punishment. so there it is. Rare would often acknowledge their players' choice to cheat, and with that, would try to discourage the behavior so their games could be enjoyed as intended. Though obviously, with Rare having implemented the cheats in the first place, GameShark notwithstanding, it wasn't as though the team never wanted anybody using cheats. It's just they don't want people fronting for doing so. In games like GoldenEye 007, cheats had to be unlocked by performing well in a level, but the game would also restrict progress if the player made use of cheats in the campaign, as if the player completes a level while a cheat is active, neither additional cheats nor the next level will unlock. However, as an odd side effect of this broadly implemented restriction, this included cheats which would actually make the game harder. Despite giving themselves a handicap, using any cheat that made a level harder would still result in no reward. Perfect Dark, on the other hand, while having the same requirements to unlock cheats, was a bit more direct in telling the player they aren't all that. When completing a mission with cheats enabled, the player's mission status and agent status will display cheated and dishonored, respectively, as opposed to complete and active if the player finished a level legitimately. Speaking of first-person shooters, though we're going to move away from Rare, another game which also withheld rewards from players who used cheats was the second Turok entry. One of the most simple cheats a player can use in a chapter or stage-based game is the good old classic level skip cheat. This was a blessing in the age of impossibly difficult titles which had no means of retaining progress, but in Turok 2, using it would mean you weren't going to get to see the true reward. The game's best ending. Turok 2 had two different endings depending on the player's performance towards the end of the game, but if they had used cheats at any stage to get here, they won't be able to see the best ending of the game, only the bad ending. Turok 3 also had an anti-cheat measure, but took a bit of a different approach. If players used cheats, they would actually have an additional message at the end of its credits sequence. After the final cutscene of the game that is revealed post-credits, text will appear which reads, "You finished, but you cheated." Activating cheats can sometimes have consequences as a result of exactly what you ask for. Battle Tanks is a game which entails exactly what you might expect. You are battling, and you are a tanks. The title has a number of cheats for the player to take advantage of, such as the most universal cheat of all time, infinite health. However, if the player makes use of this cheat, they may find themselves in a situation that the developers might have just never considered, or if they did, it's a pretty devilish way of punishing the player. The campaign mode of the game cannot be completed if the player has infinite health, as they will find themselves enjoying the pleasures of a bonus stage at some point, which involves surviving for as long as possible while destroying as many enemy tanks as you can before you yourself are destroyed. So as you might have guessed, because the player has infinite health, they will of course never be destroyed. As the player is unable to turn cheats off mid-game, there is no way of getting past any bonus stages while the cheat is active, meaning that in this case, a simple cheat will softlock the whole game. Do you remember the beginning of the video where we said we wouldn't be talking about simple shortcut style cheats? Well,
I lied.
Rogue Squadron doesn't punish the player for using cheat codes, but if you take a shortcut which is clearly visible on a map, that is unacceptable behavior. It deserves criticism, in fact, which is exactly what the game does. During the Beggar's Canyon race, the announcer will notice if the player takes a sneaky shortcut across the course, and will state that, "Someone's cheating out there, we're gonna have to start this race over." The number one rule of cheating in a game, of course, is that if nobody sees you do it, nobody has to know. If the player attempts to make this quick skip in a more stealthy fashion, sticking low to the third dune as you pass over and being as quick as you can be, the game will not restart the race. Perhaps the announcer just didn't spot the faux pas. So this is one case where cheating well actually makes a difference. Going back to Rare, because Rare apparently made 80% of all noteworthy N64 games it seems, and one of their most popular franchises of all time, Banjo Kazooie has perhaps the most definitely intended, fully divulged, and harshest anti-cheat punishments in this video. In the game's original release on the N64, if 3 or more secret codes are used to unlock levels at Treasure Trove Cove, Grunty will be most perturbed and will erase the player's entire save file. Bottles does warn the player ahead of time that this would happen, however, but even then, it seems a bit much. This mechanic in the game is known as Grunty's Code Vengeance, and will only work with codes not given to the player in-game, like the ones to provide infinite power-ups, remove objects, transform the player, etc, etc. In the Xbox Live Arcade release of the game, this mechanic wound up being disabled, but that doesn't mean that there is no punishment for the crime at all. Instead of deleting the player's save after 3 codes are entered, the game will just disable the player from saving the game after even just 1 code has been entered, as well as disabling achievements and leaderboards. There's a similar reaction to entering codes in the Xbox version of Banjo Kazooie as well, which had no punishment in the original Nintendo 64 release, though this makes sense as most modern titles will disable features like achievements if the player uses cheats. Did you also know that Zelda's hair is absolutely bonkers if you play a pirated version of Ocarina of Time? Or that Pokemon games on the DS won't let pirates make progress at all? For a whole bunch of Nintendo piracy facts, check out the video on screen. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I had a lot of fun with this one. I know we got some good episodes coming up as well, so look forward to those. Going back and playing some of these N64 games, man, that controller be whack as fuck. I'm just saying. It's cool, but it's wacky.